Welcome to Beacon of Creation, a weekly podcast on game design through the lens of Magic the Gathering. I'm Tim.
Hi, I'm Caillou.
I'm Cool Beans. I'm the project lead for Moxtober Cube.
I'm Crime. You can also call me Rowan. I'm your local sweetheart for the Moxtober project.
Amazing. We got a stacked pod today. We got three of the creators of the Moxtober Cube, which was a big project to create a whole cube for Moxtober. Moxtober is a big October event created by Bradley Rose, kind of based off of the Inktober idea. We're going to have a prompt a day, but we have like a whole crew, Ancestral, Mark Confidant, a couple other people putting together prompts. You can go and check our Moxtober podcast if you want the whole backstory. But the main idea here is that every day there's a different prompt, a different kind of spooky word to maybe design some cards off of. But designing one card at a time, that's like way too easy. So some ambitious friends that we got on the show today decided to take that concept a little bit further. Maybe Cool Beans, do you want to give us the starting point there?
Yeah, an unrelated user who didn't end up being part of the project had the idea to do like 5 cards a day for all of Moxtober, and that got you sort of close to a full cube.
Yeah.
I don't know. I shuffled the idea a little bit. We got to 5 people, 2 cards per day, and then I just sort of asked over and over in the channel until I got a full team. We ended up with 5 lead designers and then 2 backup designers who didn't end up designing any cards for the cube, but we appreciated having them around just in case. 5 people, 2 cards per person, and that gets you to 310 cards, and then a land cycle per person gets you up to 360.
Oh, wow. I love the math. The initial inspiration there of like, wait a second, 5 per day times 31. Oh my God, we're so close. So this was like a Discord activity for you guys? This was off of the MSC server maybe? Or where did you all meet each other?
Yeah, the conversation started in MSC, but then I made a group chat, and then we made a server, and the rest of it was run within the server, which you can now access. We've like opened it up if people want to like look through and see our development process.
Maybe Caillou and Crime, we can get your opinions on this. Like when this was first proposed to you, what was the idea?
I believe that Cool Beans literally said, one more person and we can make Moxtober Cube happen. And I was like, sure, I'm in. It's incredibly rare that like an actual collaborative project in a custom Magic space comes through and does well. Coordination is just incredibly difficult, and lots of times there's like flagging interest or ability. But when you have a small team, you know where to go and where to look for the things that you need. Cool Beans, amazing, handled like lots of like the organizational administrative aspects. So I think the rest of us were able to just be like, okay, I'm going to design. I didn't jump around, so I would design from prompt 1 to the end. I would jump ahead, but I wanted to adhere to the linear progression because I felt like that was pretty important to Moxtober culture and stuff, and also just being able to make stuff and then see, oh, what are other people making on this day?
So you drop in these cards like in Discord, and then Cool Beans is like compiling them all into like an MSE file or something like that?
Pretty much exactly, yeah.
Do you end up changing your cards like the day of or whatever? People offer some feedback, or were you shooting it in there and say, we'll revise later?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. We had
fair enough.
We were getting it to a degree of polish and then coming back and revisiting it.
Yeah, it was pretty early on that we decided that we were gonna not actually like reveal the project until December. So we knew we'd have like a full month of time to give feedback and polish. So we weren't super worried about like having everything figured out, story wise, like typo wording wise. A lot of it was left until the month of November.
I have bursts of creative energy, and then on like the last day, I was behind like a week, and so like I was just sitting there like cranking out my last few cards because I was behind. Sometimes that's just how it goes.
That may have also been my process.
Yeah, sometimes you get the brainstorm rolling and you just don't want to stop. Like that's how it is sometimes. I'll edit like 2 podcasts and then not think about the show for like a week and a half.
If I'm working in a vacuum on cards, I don't have reason to keep like pushing forward, but then I would see someone else's card and be like, oh, that's a cool idea. I want to make something that like works with that either mechanically or like, oh, that's a cool flavor. What does that imply about this world? What can I do with that? And roll from there.
Oh, you see a card and you're like, oh, I'm not just making my own card. I'm making a card that's going to synergize with that cool new card that I saw submitted.
Exactly.
That does seem pretty addictive. Crime, when you heard about this the first time, it sounds like you were one of you were ahead of Caillou in the queue. You were signed up pretty early. What appealed to you about this project?
I think I was one of the first people that saw Beans post it, and my response, I think word for word, was, "If you can get 3 other idiots to commit to this, then I'll sign on." And I was very like, "There's no chance this is possibly going to survive like a week." And then by the end of it, I was like, "Oh God, we've made a cube."
Incredible. Cool Beans, you were also designing cards too. You weren't just administrating it, right?
Yeah, I was designing cards. I was honestly pretty strictly adhering to the daily schedule. I find that like
Oh,
when I'm working on my own, it's very hard for me to like actually make cards, like find motivation to do that. And so having the very strict, like I have to get this done by midnight, and I was doing that. I was designing cards basically every night,
oh.
and so I was very, yeah. I think I was probably the most like close to the schedule. Everyone else was bouncing around.
Was there like a day where you just nothing? You couldn't think of anything for the prompt?
I think the prompts alone wouldn't be difficult, but the way, because Beans like just randomized all of the slots from a cube skeleton and then randomized the prompts with them, which led to some really interesting stuff, which we'll see later, but also led
Yeah.
to some of the most difficult, like screw-turningly, like, yeah, where does the circle go? In the square hole type of thinking slash designs.
Should I talk
Yeah.
a little bit about how the skeleton was made?
Yeah, I'm interested. I want to hear about this.
Yeah, I took a cube skeleton that was pretty bare bones that I think Schwa made. And it didn't have any. It had the creature slots laid out, and they were like fine. And then it had non-creature slot. It just said non-creature spell, and there was like 20 of those in every color. And so then I took some pre-existing cubes and I like sort of roughly estimated numbers on everything, which ended up being a little weird. And then I just wrote out the names and the prompts on each like in columns, and I just randomized those in Google Sheets. And it turned out, yeah, I was honestly pretty lucky. Like I've had a bunch of ramp cards on a day that was like growth. And we ended up with a 5-color card on the last day, which was cool. But definitely Caillou especially had a lot of really awful slots.
I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if it was me especially, but there were definitely days where it felt like it.
There's one specific example of how this blew up, and it's one of the prompts was forest, which may have some associations in Magic the Gathering. I want you to guess. Okay, there's 10 a day. I want you to guess how many of the forest cards were green.
2.
1.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was just looking back. There's a message, Caillou talking about this. Caillou said, "I think this prompt shuffling has forced me to make some creative cards, which I appreciate. But also, Beans, once this is over, I am going to kill you."
Still have to make good on that one.
Yes, Beans keeps extending the lifetime of the project by like, is he getting us on this podcast, for example? So now,
oh, okay, it's a 1001 Arabian Nights thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just gonna keep updating the project, card at the time. Yeah.
So I want to think a little more about the skeleton, because I think this is actually like there's some things that people could reuse here about this idea where we're kind of randomizing slots. We've got prompts for slots. Did you have kind of like mana cost details? Did you have like, these are the 2 1-drops, these are the 2 3-drops? Or you just have to kind of hope that those kind of things work out?
Yeah, the creature slots, so I'm looking at the spreadsheet. I had a code for the cards, which just counts from 1 to 360. And a color, mana value if it's a creature, or non-creature spells didn't have a assigned mana value. And then the creatures, as I mentioned, Schwa had these already in it. So this one would be like aggro attacker. And then the day it is, the theme, and then the designer. But the non-creature slots I had to make up myself, so they're more bare bones. This one just says board wipe, and then in parentheses, funky. But people made it work.
Would you change it up, or you feel like it's like all you needed to get started if you did it again?
I think it's mostly good. There's a couple slots in here that are like, because I was basing these on pre-existing cubes, and our archetypes ended up not, well, that like most of them were traditional, but there were some that were a little weird. So there's spots that like asked for like artifact support, and we just didn't have that. We didn't want that. So stuff like that needed to be switched around. We had like 5 board wipe slots, which was too many. There's a couple other numbers that are a little off, but I think for the most part it holds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like specifically to the board wipe point, I think there was like some slots that were like really specific to like I think like existing cards. Like I don't know the name of it. It's like Time Prison or something. It's the one white exile on non permanents with mana value 2 or less until it leaves the battlefield. Which is a really cool card, but it's also a very specific type of thing that not every cube needs. And it was one of the slots there.
I would also like to note that there were several arguments about what do you mean funky card draw?
Or like funky board wipe. What is funky? What
I
is
don't know.
I kind of feel like I expect everyone to be submitting cool cards anyhow, so funky might be like a personal note that I make, but I don't know that I'd ever instruct someone else to make a funky board wipe. Unless they were making the Donkey Kong Country set, in which case, Bananarama time.
Yeah, of course. We may have had arguments about it. It did work.
I like this. I think the other kind of appealing thing that we started to talk about was like, how quickly did themes start to appear in the set? Were you like 2 or 3 days in and you're like, oh, looks like we've got an elf theme. Looks like we've got a lands and graveyard theme. How long did that kind of stuff take to materialize? And how did you react to that during the design process?
Fairly fast, if I remember correctly. It was a lot of planting flags in the sand and being like, I like sacrifice.
Oh, okay.
There's so many multicolored cards. Like I think 3 or 4 out of 5 people had a multicolored slot for their day one, and so right off the bat we had like I think like it was like 3 or 4 archetypes just. And obviously, like cube like archetypes are a lot looser, right? And you can just have generically good, strong cards. But there are definitely like notions towards what these color pairs would look like.
Yeah, you kind of drag everyone else kicking and screaming if you just, you're first, you get a Golgari card and then a green card and then a black card. And you're like, well, here's the package. Everyone else, follow me.
Yeah, there was a bit of like some people. We had a couple different things going on in green white early on. We ended up figuring out. I think our final archetype list was locked in around the 11th.
Wow, that's early. Yeah.
That sounds about right. I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
We kind of changed like a couple of archetypes after the month was done, right? Like blue red went through a pretty significant transition on what it was trying to do. Well, kind of.
Yeah, and like it wasn't like a complete shift, right? It was more like blue black and blue red were in similar spaces, than like litigating where and where not they should overlap, kind of deal.
Okay.
If we want to talk about specifics of lore, Caillou designed a card on I think day 3 that pretty much defined the rest of the story of the project.
For lots of this project, I was using an art file that I'd made for. I wanted to do an American Wild set where every card was green. So like instead of colorless slots, you'd have green. Instead of red commons, you'd have red green commons, and all of that. And so lots of like very like autumnal foresty vibes and like horns and stuff. And I made like a big reanimator target, and I was like, I came across this art of like this really cool crow with horns, and I'm like, oh, this looks sick, but I need a name for it. And so I was asking around, whatever. And I love my flowery names, so I ended up just going with like, just on a whim, She Who Swallowed the Moon. It's like, doesn't that sound cool? Doesn't that sound sick?
Yeah.
The lore just sprung up from there because I guess it ended up being kind of evocative. But I also think that earlier than this, for me, the first thing of, this is a cool lore thing to grab onto is what Crime did on day one. So I want Crime to talk about that.
I was immediately given 2 gold slots. The 2 legends ended up being the like 2 like disparate factions or countries or land masses in our setting. Dane the Woodsman, who is from the Hollow, which is sort of like the gothic Halloween, we're going to the woods to go see the witch's cabin or whatever playing. And then the other one was the White Shoe Pit Crew, which was this Boros group of artificer priestesses, whose thing I established was that they went around fixing things using spirit magic, or like that creation was a part of magic for them.
So you've got kind of this like people surviving out in the woods faction, and you've got this like let's build a bunch of stuff faction.
Yeah.
The concept of this place where creation and celebration is integral to their culture and like understanding of magic felt like a cool concept to explore. But it's also in a way sort of ignorant of the struggles of other people in their world, and there's an interesting dynamic there. They're not explicitly doing anything wrong by just kind of vibing and living their lives, but they're also like there needs to be some sort of communication between these groups and an understanding of like, hey, could you spare some magic for the rest of us a little bit?
Yeah, it was around day 4. Crime. I have this image. I don't know if we can do anything with it, but it came up with this like sort of grand structure for how the world was set up, just like putting cards on this diagram. Now they're called the Crown of the Hollow, but at first they were just called, I think it was topside and downside.
Oh yes, it was upside and downside.
That sort of like split, and then a lot of the lore came from that, and then the orchard in the middle. A lot of like the base idea of the lore goes to crime, and that was on day like 4. So we were working from this base for a lot of it.
I very much appreciate that everyone saw my conspiracy board of my friends' cards. It was like, yeah, I'll run with that.
I guess is this a good time to talk about like the actual story TM and like the threads there? Because I feel like the orchard and the dryads is pretty central to that.
Who wants to take it away on our story overview?
We start off with She Who Swallowed the Moon, who at one time was just a nameless crow. And as crows do, they like stealing eggs. They're like, okay, I'm going to steal eggs from each other, from rival clans. The bravest ones go and steal phoenix eggs.
Oh.
But She Who Swallowed the Moon had ambition. Her plan is, I want to get the biggest egg there is, the egg in the sky. She puts on her, I guess, travel wings and gets onto it and just flies up there. And usually there's lots of mythology where it's like, oh yeah, they ate the moon, but it's like, you know, it's a metaphor for something. In this case, no, it's just she ate the moon. She is the main villain, but also is very much not like an intentionally malicious figure, just someone with a very, very warped worldview who is sort of like, I want to like I want to be better, and like I want to have the story of myself told, and I want to like, and there's sort of like a disconnect between that and also like the understanding of like maybe eating the moon is a bad thing.
She doesn't have a name, but if you refer to her in pronouns, they have to be capitalized. The event that happened when she swallowed the moon is this thing that we eventually came to refer to as Nightfall.
Okay.
So Caillou made a card that I think is a very strong summary of everything that Nightfall is about. That card is called Freeze to Death.
Okay.
Particularly for the hollow, it didn't really affect the crown or the northern section like Waishu quite as much, which I'd say is a big part of where their conflict came in.
When the moon was eaten, importantly, the sun, their sibling, their pal, was basically like, cool, I'm also leaving.
Oh. Uh-oh.
This is sort of part of where the disconnect between the crown and the hollow comes up, is that one of the few human settlements at the time was this place called the Dawn Empire. And the Dawn Empire had like sun magic and stuff going on, vaguely, not super elaborated on, but they had essentially this recourse of like, hey, we have this magic that we can use to protect ourselves, and the rest of the world, especially the hollow, really didn't have that.
There's enough of a remnant of the sun's power that people are safe there.
It was the red planeswalker you made.
It's Tyann, yeah.
Tyann, yes, that's the one.
Fleur designed a card pretty early that was called Sanguine Vengeance that describes her eating the moon, making a bunch of vampire families all mad and work together. And so over the next few days, I think I ended up with 3 vampire families. And so
Okay.
you've got them fighting against her, and you've got this Wakeshin? I wouldn't know how I'd...
Yeah, I'd say Weikshin or
Wakeshin,
Weikshin.
sure, yeah. And she goes into the temple from the Dawn Empire and gets this remnant of the sun that they've preserved as an artifact. She becomes very powerful. She's a planeswalker. And she goes and kills all of the Blackwings. Yeah, she just massacres them effectively.
I guess massacring vampires. That's what it's the
No,
question.
the vampires and Tyann are working together. They're both against the Blackwings, who are the crows.
Oh.
The crows effectively form like a cult or an organization around She Who Swallowed the Moon called the Blackwings.
Oh, okay. Eternal Night. We love this.
Let's mess around a bit.
I hate the dawn.
I hate the dawn. It's weird. It's bright out.
Yeah. All right.
The Blackwings sort of act as a group that they're like they're a cult, but they also kind of they have a day job as helping people cross through the orchard. And the orchard is important because I think I want to throw this to Crime to explain. I guess Crime and Cool Beans, because Crime came up with one important dryad, and Cool Beans came up with some of the other important dryads, and there was a nice thing going on there.
So we had the setup, and I believe they lived in the orchard. These four dryads that controlled the seasons. And so each of them for a quarter of the year would sit on what we called the gnarled throne, and they'd control the forest, they control the orchard, and thus they control the seasons. So there's like the Scion of Spring, and there's the Scion of Summer, etc. And so that was all in balance and cool. And so that was presumably going from probably before the first Nightfall onwards, like through it. And then a character shows up.
Whoever's like the current scion of the season, like say during the winter, it's Helga, Scion of Winter, which Caillou designed. Say she's on the throne during winter. She then will relinquish her authority over to Spring. Spring will relinquish it, give it over to Summer, so on and so forth. There's one dryad by the name of Ive, whose whole gist was like, what if someone just doesn't give up the throne? I really liked how She Who Swallowed the Moon was like a very like alien mindset villain who like wasn't evil per se. And I thought, I do want an evil protagonist. I want someone who's a monster.
Yeah, I like this kind of creative process of like, I see you have built up a nice peaceful society there. It would be a shame if someone designed the agent of its destruction.
Yeah. She is also the sort of natural conclusion of a sort of dryad tribal theme that we ended up developing.
Oh, okay.
One of the first cards that we had designed was like a 2/2 red dryad creature token with Decayed.
Oh, that's exciting. Alrighty, so they usher in the return of the one that eats the moon?
Yes, Ive assists She Who Swallowed the Moon, gives her the Heart of the Wood, which is this power enough to break out of her containment, cause another Nightfall, and do a bunch of shenanigans.
Do we know why Ive did that?
It's great distraction, because while everyone's super worried about the big evil crow going around, she can just sit pretty on her throne.
Okay, cool.
Oh, okay.
So if all the dryads are a bit too worried about, oh my god, there's so many monsters running around.
Yeah.
They're not going to be that worried about the new fascist.
So we got second Nightfall. Is that game over? Is the plane dead now?
Well, this is where we get the aforementioned vampire plus Tyann.
Oh, okay.
There's like a interfighting between the dryads because there's Ive and the Scions. The Blackwings are like, yay. Then you have the Wakeson elves and humans sort of team up with the vampires and the humans from the Hollow as like a united front to try and stop her with a capital H. And that's when they break out the little remnant of the sun, give it to Tyann. Tyann goes a planeswalker.
So they become a planeswalker. They peace out. World doomed.
Or no, she's like,
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
she's like, I'm going to do some violence.
All right.
Yeah, like a little else happens, but effectively they kill the antagonists, and then the antagonists are dead, and everyone's like, "Yippee!"
Hooray! I love when antagonists die.
She Who Swallowed the Moon actually has. I really like the card that depicts her death effectively. I think Caillou made it.
Oh, okay.
I think this one this is like my literally the last card I made.
Oh.
It's called the Raven's Reward. And the idea is at the very end, basically, She Who Swallowed the Moon was like, hold on, wait, this is a really cool story that I've like ended up weaving with my life. I'm actually kind of okay with dying now because I think that makes this an even better story than if I win and no one's around to hear it. So she's like, yeah, I'll do a little dying as a treat.
The definitive documentary of my life has been filmed, so I'm ready to die. I can go. My legacy is complete.
Exactly.
It's very Waikshu of her to be like, well, the story was good. So, I mean,
my memoir, 2 million copies sold. I'm out.
2 million copies sold.
Now that we've finished off the bad guys, that might be a good way to lead into how you all polished up the set. So you had sort of just crunching out 360 cards over the course of a month, right? And then you sort of allotted an extra month to just go back and like edit everything. Would you say that like most cards change, only a couple cards change? How did you figure out like what power level to settle on? Where did that kind of stuff come from?
When we got the first version of Thing finished, I set up a channel that was a changelog effectively, so we could talk about cards and people could put how they wanted their cards changed, and then I'd fix them all on my file, and then every like week or so I'd put out a new version. And so we had this sort of back and forth of like fixing cards, and then I change them, and then we go back. And eventually we invited a bunch of playtesters into the server. We got something like 10 playtesters, and we drafted the set, and we had some people just look all the way through the set. And so that gave us a bunch more changes we wanted to do.
I want to specifically shout out Pip because she went through the entire set and gave like not exactly card by card, but basically every card that actually needed some work throughout the whole set. Must have been like hundreds of comments.
Wow.
It was very helpful.
Talking about proportion of card that got changed, I feel like it's probably still less than like half, but it was a very definitely a large number of changes, and like making archetype stuff work. We ended up changing around a bunch of cards so we could have Torment as like a set mechanic. Things that just lost its life, we'd replace with Torment, and we did a bunch of changes sort of along those lines.
Yeah, that keyword thing's kind of interesting. So what keywords did you end up with? How did that happen?
Oh my goodness, I think we had like 15 keywords first swing through. It was a lot. I can check it right now.
Well,
when you're designing one-off cards, it's pretty easy to just like throw mechanics on there. It's like I had a card with like Blitz and Convoke on it, and it's like neither of those were really necessary. So a lot of like one-off stuff like that got cut.
I've done some counting. So we had more than this to start off. But beyond evergreen mechanics, we have like 25 of them.
Oh.
And that is after we cut some of them.
Yeah.
It's mostly one-offs. It's a lot of, we have one Amass card, we have one Landfall card, we have one Exalted card, etc., etc.
Oh, okay.
We have one card with a bound, which I could have sworn I changed. But I guess it's still in the file.
Another part of that I wanted to try to figure out is, did you have like a discussion or consensus? Were you aiming for like vintage cube? Were you aiming for just like a commons and uncommons cube? Were you aiming for a retail set with some extra juice in it? Like, what did you have any guiding principles for about what power level you were shooting for?
Yeah, the skeleton and the cubes that I made the skeleton off of were Pioneer cubes, and so that's sort of what we went into it with. I feel like we ended up on a power level where it's like every card would be like the best card in the Pioneer cube. Like they could all sort of go in there, but it felt definitely stronger than that.
Okay.
I'm used to both playing and designing for cubes of a much higher power level, so like trying to abstract myself down to Pioneer was not working.
Oh no.
I personally ended up with like some 20 power level cards.
There there was one card that I remember designing that was Caillou saw that card and was like, "Hey, are you sure you want to post idyllic tutor with 3 upsides?" Which I didn't quite realize.
Yeah, I think in a cube setting, there's room to creep idyllic tutor. It's 3 mana, search up an enchantment, put it in your hand.
Perhaps.
And you probably did some like, I think I might have jumped into one of these, like drafts on Draftmancer, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that definitely helped get feedback on like individual cards. Honestly, more came from the people who were looking through, but like on how archetypes felt to draft, we got a lot of feedback from that. Like we learned the reanimator deck. We learned we didn't really have any like reanimator spells. We had big creatures, kind of, but we didn't have that many. So then we like went back. We were like, what slots can we turn into reanimator spells? We like fixed a few, and so there's a lot of iterative process like that to make all the archetypes feel good to draft.
I think it was the first draft. 2 issues immediately came up. One being the Spellslinger deck doesn't have any spellslinging cards, and the Reanimator deck doesn't have any reanimation spells. And I imagined our like private chat where the 5 of us just talked about like what we were going to be working on as like alarms going off, being like, "Oh God, how did we miss this?"
Yeah.
It's very like tragedy of the commons. Oh, like I'll design this big reanimator target, and then someone else can design a reanimator spell. But like, if we didn't make that clear, just no one did. And there also wasn't a slot for reanimator in the skeleton, because as I said, the skeleton archetypes were different than the ones we actually ended up with. So it's like, yeah.
Interesting. So no one was assigned to make it, but someone just hoped someone would make it, I guess. Yeah.
Whoops.
Fair enough. How quickly did you try to start firing off those kind of like playtest drafts? Was that like October 31st, let's do this? Or was that after a couple of weeks of polishing? When did you opt to do that?
So we did like a very quick round of polish. As soon as all the cards were done, it was like typos. Everything else we don't care about. Like let people see the cards. And we invited all the playtesters, and we immediately started firing drafts. We honestly didn't draft that much, but we do like draft, go back, make a version. So there was a version on the 5th, a version on the 10th, version on the 16th. And then there wasn't another one until we sort of slowed down at that point. We didn't end up needing a whole month, honestly. So then we had a final version on like the 29th, and then that was the one we used for the preview season and everything.
Very cool. Actually, we could talk a little bit about that because that was fun too. The idea here is that this is kind of like a canon, a Wizards preview season, but it's in Discord. You're assigning, people can opt to have cards. They'll write up the cards.
Yeah, honestly, my vision when I like proposed the project idea would be everyone showing off their cards for every day, 5 previews a day. Everyone else thought that was unsustainable, and they were right. So we ended up making a schedule of like 2 to 3 people per day, and then Crime, you did a bunch of guest previews that you coordinated, I think, just like on your own.
We want everyone to be like equally represented throughout the preview month. But we don't want to like post everyone's cards every day because that might be a bit too much.
Yeah.
So I ended up making this spreadsheet where it was like, okay, so this person gets represented 13 times. This person gets represented 11 times, so they can pick 2 more slots from here. And it was this very convoluted process.
It's a very good spreadsheet. I'd say like all time that spreadsheet is very good.
Oh,
thank you.
Premium spreadsheet alert.
Yeah, and so we'd have everyone send in a list. So I'd be like, yeah, I want to preview on the 1st, the 4th, the 5th, the 8th. You have to let me preview on the 11th because it is my birthday. And so we'd all send in a list like that, and then Crime did all the dirty work of compiling it.
That does sound like a premium spreadsheet.
And then it made it a lot easier for me to just sift through my days and be like, actually, I'm out of the state that day. Hey, Rizzy, could you write a short story for me?
Alrighty.
And stuff along that lines.
Well, speaking of, I guess this wouldn't be previews, but do you think we should jump into just talking about a couple cards now?
Oh, actually, Caillou, did you have something you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I just wanted to loop back around to the end of the story because there is the note of, okay, the bad people are defeated, but I think that the real note at the end of the story is less about the bad guys are gone, woohoo, and more about like this tentative budding reconciliation between these various factions that have either been callous to each other or have wronged each other in some way, and it's the start of negotiations and sort of like this idea of like we're living in this world together. Let's have some good cohabitation practices. I think that a key part of the story is this idea that like, yeah, we can't just forgive, forget, and be besties, but there is a degree of like understanding different perspectives and coming to appreciate them.
All right. Did that make it onto some of the cards?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I sent 5. I sent 5 examples in the chat.
Caillou and I really honed in on one of the major themes of the set being like societal trauma and like how does that affect the relationship of individuals between each other, which I think was a neat contrast to the oh my god it's the end of the world plot that we had also going on, sort of a very universal A plot and a very personal B plot.
Hey, there's a bunch of also like C plots going on, like individual storylines that kind of just individual designers sort of wove through. Like my favorite personally is one that Fleur came up with, where there's this colorless planeswalker called Ensof, who's like this bounty hunter character.
I love Edsoft so much.
You want to talk about Ensof? I'm down. Go.
I was genuinely considering using Ensoft for my 2 cards. Fleur made this colorless planeswalker dude who's like this sci-fi bounty hunter in this like fantasy fairly medieval setting, and they're like, I'm a poacher and I go into dungeons and I steal ancient treasures, and then he dies super hard within 3 cards.
Oh, dang! Yeah, it's
he's got a very short story.
I love what Fleur did with him. The man is fascinating.
Like Boba Fett showing up in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, exactly. And also having the same death of flying directly into a sandpit.
Wow.
If you have any knowledge of the world and any respect for it, you can navigate it fine. But Ensof is just like stupidly independent and stupidly just like, yeah, I can do it, whatever. And just bites it so hard.
I think my favorite lore in the whole project is that if you can't get the support of the Blackwings and you want to travel through the orchard, the traditional method is just put a pumpkin on your head. And so we have a bunch of cards with pumpkin headed art because we needed to, because we had like a pumpkin day. One of the themes is pumpkin. So there's a little bit of it's silly, but we get to use all this good pumpkin art. Yeah, that's perfect.
It's kind of like smearing zombie blood on you to keep zombies away kind of thing. You put a pumpkin on your head and then the vampires can't find you.
It's like kind of silly, but it makes a lot of sense.
Alrighty. Before we get out of here, we want to give you a taste of some of these cards and read them instead of just alluding to their flavor and stuff like that. So we got, I think, 2 per person. Cool Beans, what's your first little beautiful baby?
All right, my first card. I'm gonna do 2 planeswalkers I designed. The second one will come later.
Oh,
this is Ellie, Gleam of Hope. So she's 2 in a red for legendary planeswalker, 3 loyalty. +1, create a 1/1 colorless Spirit Lantern artifact creature token. It gains haste and attacks this turn if able. -1, you get an emblem with attacking creatures you control get +1/+L. -6, creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. After this main phase, there are 5 additional combat phases, followed by an additional main phase. I'm really happy with the +1 ability, because it's like a pretty standard, like you make a token, but to balance it at 3 mana, the token like immediately has to attack, so you're not actually defending the planeswalker. And the -6 lets me make a joke about red vigilance.
I hate how well the red vigilance works on Ellie.
Alrighty, yeah. So we're pumping out a token every turn. 3 mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker. So, you got to do a little work to defend. But if you're on the aggression, if your opponent's not attacking anytime soon, we're gonna burn some people down with Gleam of Hope here.
Yeah, this planeswalker also is maybe my second favorite pop out of the art that I did all the pop outs.
Yeah, custom pop outs for the planeswalkers. Very nice.
And I do want to plug anyone who's listening to this. If you ever want a planeswalker pop out, I love to do it. I think I'm pretty good at doing it. Please just DM me and I will do planeswalker pop outs for you.
Beans is being very humble. Think that they're good at it. They're very good at it.
You need the right art to have the right pop out, though. Or you're the master. You can pull the right pop out.
I
of
can
any
pop
card.
anything. That's what I say.
Incredible. All right, Crime. What's your card?
One of my cards is called Something Familiar. This is the card we mentioned earlier. 1 white for a sorcery. Search your library for an artifact card, enchantment card, or planeswalker card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. The part of Something Familiar that I'm really invested in is the flavor text being, before he passed, your father would spend his nights looking into the dark corners of your old home. You found yourself staring into those same places, hoping to understand. For the preview of Something Familiar, I actually had my dear friend Hersey write sort of like a poem associated with it that I think they did an extremely good job with, because Hersey is one of the best writers I know. I've always been a little fixated on the concept of someone's role, like whether those roles be something that we put on for the benefit of ourselves or other people, or the roles that we put other people into. So when I'm writing, and usually I'm writing horror or something else grotesque, I kind of like the use of second person, of saying you instead of saying he or she or I, to ask the reader to like, you're going to play a role for me for a second. Do your best. There's no messing up. Have fun with it. And see whatever people do with that. I'd be interested in seeing what people make of the story on Something Familiar, how they contextualize it for themselves. I obviously have a certain idea of it in my head.
So you had this like idyllic tutor that you didn't realize was super idyllic tutor.
It was extremely idyllic tutor.
Did the mechanic come first, and then you're like, I'm going to layer this sick flavor on top of it, or were you already in a certain mind space?
It was absolutely flavor first, because it was I got ring for white, and I was like, what do I do for ring? And eventually I found this really good art of someone in the forest finding this orb of light, which I was like, well, it's like a ring of light. I could argue that.
Sure.
What do I do for ring for white? Ask the person.
Ring. I'm an idiot. I can't believe I never thought of that.
Got him. All right, Caillou, what's your first card you want to talk about?
I thought a lot about this one because there's other cards that I love more mechanically, like my design for What Remains for a Sun, my design for Sit the Gnarled Throne. I think are both like really cool mechanically, but ultimately I'm a sucker for flavor. I'm a sucker for simplicity, and whenever I come back to this project and I like, if I'm like thinking about the project and like the first image that pops into my mind, it's this card, which is Play with Fireworks.
All right.
It's white and a red for an instant. Play with Fireworks deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life. If a player is dealt damage this way, scry 1.
Oh. All right. Play with fire plus lightning helix. I like it.
Yeah. I love what this does flavorfully, but I think this is the kind of card where I think sometimes in custom Magic there's a degree of like we get into doing stuff that's like mostly appreciable by people who are enfranchised in the hobby, which is not a bad thing because they're going to be the primary audience anyways, right?
Yeah.
But what I love about this card is I could show literally any Magic player it and then be like, oh, that's cute, that's neat. And I think that's something I love because I have some friends who are into Magic but don't really get the whole custom Magic thing. And so this was a card that I could show them and be like, hey, here's a thing I made. Isn't this a cool idea? And the flavor text is, in Wakesu, creation and prayer are 2 sides of the same coin. To bring new light into the world is to continue a cycle that began generations ago, honoring the world their ancestors saved for them. Which, like, again, I obviously we talked about how I became enamored with the idea of Wakesu, and so I just loved every opportunity I could to just like, well, literally shine a light on more of what was happening there. This felt like it felt good to be able to do a semi-thesis statement for what they're all about.
I had a really good time, like working on Wakeshu with Caillou. Caillou, you were one of the best people to work on Wakeshu with. You were such a good creative partner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I said up top that I had a certain reluctance, or maybe not even reluctance, but a certain like, this probably won't pan out. But everyone here both had they had the perfect mix of ambition, ability to execute, and just like passion.
All right, let's get a second round in. Cool Beans, what do you got?
Okay, I've got yet another Planeswalker card.
Oh, how many are there? It feels like I've seen like at least a dozen.
A lot. We made a lot.
There's a lot in the skeleton. There's a lot. We put a couple more that weren't even in the skeleton, honestly. Yeah, but I really like designing them. So this is Eris, the Buffeting Storm. Much subtler pop out on this one. So we got 4 white for legendary Planeswalker Eris, 5 starting loyalty. A static ability. You may activate loyalty abilities of Eris, the Buffeting Storm, twice this turn rather than only once, as long as they entered the battlefield this turn. So you get 2 abilities on the first turn. +2, look at target player's hand and create a 1/1 white human creature token with lifelink. +1, choose creature or non-creature. Spells of the chosen quality cost 2 more to cast until your next turn. And then -5, each player may return a creature they control to its owner's hand, then destroy all non-token creatures. I'm just really proud. There's a really interesting balance of like which 2 abilities you do when it enters the battlefield, because you can you can make a token and then wipe non-tokens, so you're left with a creature, or you could make a look at their hand and then make something cost more, or you could do the board wipe, return a creature to their hand, and then make creatures cost more until your next turn. Like any way you put the puzzle pieces together, you end up with like a really interesting, powerful effect, I think.
6 mana, 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Its ultimate is 5, so is this our funky board wipe?
This no, that's the thing, is that this took a Planeswalker slot, so we just had an extra board wipe. We ended up with far too many wipes.
All right.
Yeah, but it's hardly even an ultimate, because you can like +1 and then -5 the turn it comes down.
Yeah.
It's effectively just an ETB, but yeah.
Double pluses. Yeah, that's cool. Was the flavor here essential, or just the mechanical, like do 2 things on turn 1 as the seed?
The flavor on this was pretty vague. The topic for it was rain, and I think I probably just typed that into ArtStation and saw art that worked for a Planeswalker and ran with that.
Very cool.
And I think we flavored it as like some mage from the Hollow who has wind powers and like got a little bit of a following. But the lore was never super important to me. I'm always mechanics.
All right. This white human creature with lifelink, does that show up a bunch of times, or is that a one-off?
That's a really good question. I'm going to check.
All right.
As the person who did the sweep through all of the tokens, Beans, I have some bad news.
Oh yeah, I think that might be a one-off.
There is a 1/1 white human creature token. There is a 1/1 white bard creature token with lifelink. There is no human creature token with lifelink.
So this probably should be a bard. Got it.
Yeah, so Eris Ophium answers a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Crime for doing that token work, by the way. That was very useful at the time.
It took a second, and I did mess up the first time, so it did take 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for doing that, you've earned the right to describe to us your second favorite card.
I would love to describe my second favorite card. So my other card is, it is the middle section of a cycle of lands that I did that I would say is probably the main thing that people know my contribution of the project for. It is a cycle of untapped legendary lands that all tap for 2 colors. And throughout all of them, I detail this story of these 2 women, May and Ada, as they explore the Hollow and the Crown together, and sort of develop this relationship. So there is this one class I took called Electronic Creative Writing, and the main focus of the class was to look at pieces of art that could only exist in the medium that they're in, and to talk about like, what about the medium changes this piece of art? What makes it more interesting? What alters it fundamentally? So it was a lot of like itch.io games, video poems, things that only really functioned on a computer. One that really drew my attention was this one called The Brain Drawing the Bullet by Alan Trotter. It has these like long, thin paragraphs where you read and you scroll down and you hit the button at the bottom to go to like the next paragraph. Except when it scrolls back up, you can see that the previous paragraph that you read has changed slightly, like just a couple words here and there, and that sort of helped to reinforce this story that was about this man who's being interrogated for having shot his wife at a dinner party, and how he was retelling and changing his alibi over and over until eventually by the end of the story it wasn't recognizable as the original story anymore. And so with this, I thought a lot about, like, if I want people to engage with my writing, I have to put it in its medium in a way that is conducive to that medium.
Okay.
The question is, how do you get Magic players to care about your story?
Sure. Let's do it.
A lot of times people will post like these long stories that they've worked on for a while, and this isn't like a judgment thing or anything like that, but people will not have the time or the bandwidth or the interest to really engage in it.
Discord's pretty casual, you know, sometimes you're just in there for 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, people could probably just process like 7 or 8 lines of text. Once you've gotten a little bit of interest out of them, you put in a little bit of interactivity, being that these lands aren't ordered by color. They're ordered by little clues you can find in the text. When someone has already gotten a bit of interest in reading the land cycle, then they have this little game of like, okay, well, how do I piece the timeline together? When does this happen in relationship to this event? It's sort of the same reason why a lot of people put their cat's food in like a little ball.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's more engaging to consume that way if you're involved in the process.
Enrichment.
It's the same reason why we put puzzles into set reviews. Like Crash just did a crossword puzzle today for people to get a preview. Because if you feel involved in it, then you're more invested. You're more likely to actually read and pay attention.
Alrighty, so hit us with this card.
The Northern Orchard Gate. The flavor text says, by the time May had entered the orchard, it was already dusk. Every step, every breath, every rustle of leaves was another terror waiting to swallow her whole. Leaving home was a mistake. She was going to die here. As her mind raced through the many tortures she'd suffer, a girl's voice rang out. Hey, what are you doing here?
Oh.
With that being the little midsection of the story between May and Ada, of when they meet.
Huh. You can kind of read this as the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
But then you can find out, you can look at the other, are there like 2 other legendary alpha duels sort of thing?
Oh yes, there's like 9 other ones for the whole cycle. There's 4 set before the 2 of them meet, and then there's 4 set after they meet, and there's 2 set in the orchard, one being the middle, another being the ending.
Huh.
The story is so good. People listening, go to the Plane Sculptors and like look through and find the story. It's so good and it's so sad.
Okay, I'm going to spoil it. If you don't want to be spoiled on that, go read them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to spoil A Passage to India by E.M. Forrester, which is a bit of it's like a 200-page book, so maybe you don't have to read that one. When it came to the set, I was very invested in these 2 disparate places with a bit of a tumultuous history, and these 2 women from opposite sides of the border who foster this sort of love for each other. Mm-hmm. And the ending, which, here's a hint, you can find it at the Southern Orchard Gate, is based on a book, Passage to India. That book is basically a fictionalized account of the author's time with this companion of his in India, where he asks himself, like, was this relationship always doomed to fail? Do our countries and our histories determine more about our lives and our love than we do? And the last paragraph has stuck with me every day. Like, I think about this ending paragraph maybe once or twice every day. It's I have it here. One second, I'll just read it real quick. The two of them are riding horses together in the jungle. This isn't part of the paragraph yet. They're riding horses together in the jungle after having grown so close to each other over the course of the story, and they're talking about how they can't wait to see each other again. And the paragraph reads, "But the horses didn't want it. They swerved apart. The earth didn't want it, sending up rocks through which the riders must pass single file. The temples, the tank, the jail, the palace, the birds, the carrion, the guest house that came into view as they issued from the gap and saw Mao beneath. They didn't want it. They said in their 100 voices, 'No, not yet.' And the sky said, 'No, not there.'" And so I'm very normal about that really strong and really tragic moment of these two people who have this love for each other that is inevitably doomed by their circumstances. So that's where the land cycle sort of came out of.
Incredible. Wow.
Do you want to talk about your
All right, Kayuta.
I just took so long to talk about.
Hey.
Honestly, I kind of don't. Is there anything better to end on though? I think the land cycle is really the most iconic part of the cube in a very
Yeah.
real sense.
Oh, thank you, Kay.
And like I don't think it's like the final thesis statement necessarily, but I think it really does an excellent job of like through the gut punch selling you on what is this cube about in a real way. Like why should you care about the story that's in the cards? Because definitely one thing that we got as feedback, and one thing that at least I still need to go back and look at my cards and work on, is that there's a lot of text on cards, and part of that is due to there being a lot of flavor, and so it is a little bit of it's a little bit of overhead to take in when you're first looking at the cube. But I think this is sort of, to me, the land cycle sells it on like, okay, but why is that still worth engaging with? Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do still want to know about the other card you were talking about because you said it was from someone else, and I'm curious.
You have to do it.
Okay.
I do appreciate you being very sweet to me.
It was always going to be a Fleur card. There's no world in which it wasn't going to be a Fleur card. So it's Wake of the Sky Sea, 3 blue legendary enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, draw a card if you cast a non-creature spell this turn. If that spell was mana value 3 or greater, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If that spell was mana value 6 or greater, Wake of the Sky Sea becomes a 6/6 fish creature with ward 3. It's still an enchantment. Flavor text. Before the first nightfall, the sky swimmers kept watch. Now the villagers live in blindness. Sky swimmers. Do they come up anywhere else in the cube? Hell no.
Oh.
But I think this really highlights what I love with what Fleur does, where it's like fleshing out the sense of and making this feel like a lived-in world where there's stuff that's relevant about the story, right? And we get elaboration on that. There's also aspects of the world that are just like, yeah, this exists. When you're making like a set by yourself, having hooks like that can maybe feel like, okay, you need to put some more work into world building. In a cube like this, where there's already that level of like people doing their one-off things, this sort of thing I think adds to that feeling, and rather than making them feel like out of place, by just putting more of these like really focused ones in there, it gives the sense of like, no, these are just all adding up to a portrait of a bigger world. Because again, this is really pointed in the sense of there is a thing being described that had an important impact on the world, and there's a reference to an event in the world. And I also think mechanically, it's like, okay, we don't have an explicit cast non-creature spells with high mana values archetype, but you see this and you go, oh, I want to try that. So I think that it really, like, Fleur really did a good job throughout the design process, just being like, what if I seeded this in? What if I seeded this in?
Yeah.
What if I like nurtured this little thing someone else made? And I think that's really emblematic of kind of what everyone did, but Fleur, I think, was the best at it, of like bouncing and riffing off of what other people were doing.
Yeah, this kind of flavor here says like, hey, before the first nightfall, we had all these great things. and now they're gone. Rather than them always being gone and, it always being desolate, we get stories of what existed before the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, so I think that's probably about it for talking about this cube here. Anything else we want to say before we wrap up?
First of all, this is a little thing, but the set symbol was made by Crashington. Really fantastic work. Everyone adores the set symbol. I don't know. A lot of people express this, but like we weren't super sure about this project going into it. But I feel like it really stands as like an example of you can people can do hard things. You can work together and you can produce good creative work. And I remember, I think it was Toast who said something like when we posted the first version of it, they were a playtester and they were talking about how the set was making them like tear up. It was so I don't know. It's very cool to like produce a work of art, I guess, that like has impacted people in some way, and it's possible, and you can do it, and it is good to do, and you should do it.
Anything else?
That's my final thoughts.
Yeah.
All right.
For me, I guess I have like two things. One, this is really fun because, especially with my usual relationship with Moxtober, is like I make Moxtober videos. I've made them in past years. It was a pretty cool thing. And but in a way, like sort of redefining my relationship with custom magic in the sense that like I like making videos, and I obviously still like making content. I wouldn't be on this podcast if I didn't. But like the origin of me making videos at the very start was there's no one doing it, and I don't contribute to the community by designing cards in a realistic sense. This is a different way that I can add to it. And I think that doing this project was a fun way to be like, no, I'm at the point where I can make cards and have that be a reasonable contribution. And in the sense of like everyone, like I think that reasonable contribution is very much like an all in your head thing, right? If you've made a card and you shared it, that's a reasonable contribution. The sense of like wanting people to appreciate your cards and like having it like because if you post a card sometimes you like it and you'll post it and it's like it's off into the aether, but if it's in a project, if there's something like cohesive that holds it together in people's memory, there's something nice about that. So I think doing this is like, okay, maybe 2024 I can try my hand at being an actual designer for once. And I don't have, and like I still want to make videos and stuff, but it doesn't have to be like this is the one way I can contribute, especially because now there's so many other people doing content, and I think, or like there's like more, like Beacon has existed for so long, right? But there's a thing of like it was not super talked about or shared in these other Discord spaces, and now there's a little bit more community overlap in that respect. So yeah. I can just be a designer, one of many.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that.
Yeah.
My last note is that, by God, I am going to wrap these losers into doing another group project with me again.
Uh-oh. The threat, it's official. It's been posted. The town square. Duel at noon.
Moxuary coming to...
Moxuary. How about the Ides of Mox?
You're so right, actually.
Alrighty, incredible. So that's about it for the main content of the episode. Before we get out of here, I always like to remind people of our monthly design challenge. Our January challenge is called Janu-Fairy. Design a common card that uses digital or out-of-game mechanics, but with a fairy theme. So out-of-game, digital, alchemy cards would be one thing to shoot for. We haven't seen a lot of common alchemy cards, but if you don't want to do alchemy, that's understandable. You could do dungeons, conspiracies, D20s, uncards if you want to do something kind of fairy, common fairy. You want to do something kind of funky with that. They'll be due January 26th, so only a couple days after this pod comes out. When you hear this challenge, what just jumps to mind? What's an impression of something that you'd be interested in for this challenge?
Yeah, when I think of fairies, and the first two things I think of are Spellsetter Sprite and Fairy Miscreant. Like, there's the obvious, like, typal thing of, like, gets better in multiple, but Fairy specifically lends itself so much to tempo, which is also an archetype that's kind of hard to do at common. So I would follow that that design seed and see where it takes me. Cheap has to give me card selection or otherwise be interactive.
What's the tiniest, littlest creature that we can put onto a card?
Yeah, the tiniest, littlest, most disruptive little fella.
I think the thing I like the most about fairies is that they do an extremely good job of giving the tribe an identity, of making you feel like a little rat bastard.
So you're looking for an effect that's gonna, stick it to the opponent. You want the force spike. You want something like, I just barely got it over on you.
Yeah, I need it. I need the fine print.
Oh, the fine print. I like this. Very cool. Alrighty, you only got a couple days to get a card in for that challenge. But until then, that's the podcast for the week. Go ahead and join our Discord or the MSC Discord. We'll have all those links. We'll have links to the Moxtober Cube and all that. Besides Moxtober Cube, anything you all want to shout out, plug, anything like that?
MSC Survivor Season 5. It's
Season
just
5.
announced
Sign up
at
today.
time of
Yeah,
recording.
it did just get announced.
It happened. Y'all, let's make this the biggest season of MSC Survivor that's happened. It's an amazing event. It's you just sign up, make some cards. Biggest event of the year. Buy your tickets. There's no actual payment necessary. There's literally just a form you fill out saying you want to sign up. But yeah, MSC Survivor. Join the MSC server.
This is like a big battle royale tournament thing. What's the general structure here? Give people an idea.
Yeah, so it's a design competition where there's rounds where everyone is sort of given similar prompts to design cards. There's a panel of 7 judges, and you're anonymously scored. And over time, there's sort of like cutoff points where the bottom so many designers will be eliminated, or you need a score threshold of above so much to pass. Cool Beans here, reigning champ of MSC Survivor.
It's true. I won season 4. I can attest to it. It's so much fun. It's a long competition. It took like 6 months, but it's fun every step of the way. I really do recommend you do it.
What's the time commitment like? Is this like a design a card a week? Like what are we looking at?
It ramps up, but the challenges are like it's a challenge per week, and it starts out with maybe like 3 to 4 cards. The final challenge always is something like crazy and insane.
It's like design. You usually have to design like 50 cards or something.
50 cards. Wow. If you're in the finals, though.
Yeah, there's like a initial few waves where like it's sort of like a you must be this tall sort of test, and the first few rounds there's just like a large number of people who are cut, and those are usually like I guess like 3 to 5 cards, and I think it sticks with that for a while until it like ramps up in like later rounds.
So if people just want to try it out, they're probably not signing up for too much to start.
Dropping out later is not a big deal. Just signing up and then not submitting anything is probably an issue. But then, like, I think in future rounds, people have lives. They got to drop out. It happens. But again, I think the culture around it is a lot of fun. It's sort of it very much has like sports event culture where like even if you're not participating, you like follow along, and
it's a super fun community.
There's a lot going on, but yeah, which is also why I love the community aspect, because like once you finish submitting as a contestant, you can just talk with everyone. It's like, oh, okay, we find idea exchange, the point of custom Magic communities. But yeah, I've already talked about this for too long, but MSC Survivor, go sign up.
Anything else that we want to plug?
You should play Outer Wilds. It's
Outer Wilds. Love that game. That's an all-timer for me.
That's it. That's it for me.
You should watch Succession. It's really good.
Alrighty. I love it. If people need to reach you, Discord seems like this is all Discord crew.
Yep.
If you need to reach me, I'm at Tim F. Riley. And thanks everybody for listening.
Bye-bye. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Bye.